All right.
Woohoo!
Got over our technical difficulties, I believe.
Hopefully,
We
hopefully
good
people can
now?
hear us. Be
Yes.
nice.
We'll wait real quick for some more people to come into the chat room. But I see
Yeah,
Pius is already here and Mike. Thank you, Mike, for joining. Thank you, both of you, for joining.
definitely.
Hopefully, the quality's coming through all right. We're still working on all that. But I think it's good. I think we're good and
Good.
ready to start. Let's do
Yeah.
this. Let me
Sweet. I'm
just
stoked.
pull up the chat here so I can make sure that
Hey,
that's all
chat.
working right. Yeah. Hey, you gotta make sure to you gotta be in tune with the chat.
Oh, yeah. Peter
I
says
hope
they're here too. Awesome.
good. Yeah, I have the otherwise I have my phone next to me for the chat, so it
Hmm.
should be good. All right, Lindy, you ready to get started? Another live stream.
I am ready.
This should be a fun one. I'm excited.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I'm excited too.
So the plan today is to awaken the inner forager in you,
The
the
inner
winter
beast.
for the winter forager,
Oh, yes.
because we're going to talk about 5 different plants that you can forage for in winter and eat. Of course, most foragers take time off during the winter season, which is a shame. Such
Hmm.
a shame. I think because I'm not going to argue that the winter is as good as the spring, summer, and fall for foraging,
Be a hard
but
argument.
yeah. But just because it's winter doesn't mean you can't get out there and get after some things, and doesn't mean you need to be hibernating like a bear.
Well,
So
you could be.
you could be, I guess. Um,
Sounds very warm.
if you're a bear listening live right now, drop that bear emoji into chat. Show us that
Yeah.
you're not hibernating. Um, so we're streaming this a little bit before the Christmas holidays. If you're watching live, you'll know. If you're listening later in the audio recording or on YouTube here, um, then you'll know too. But happy holidays,
Happy
first of all, to all of
holidays.
you.
Yeah.
I hope the upcoming Christmas week is full of quality family time for you, and lots of tasty food. Hopefully, some forage food, maybe some local ingredients. That would be ideal.
Whatever you can find.
Yeah, yeah. And I want to know what you like are traditionally eating over Christmas. So drop that in the chat or in the comments below. Let us
Hmm.
know. Everyone's got their own Christmas traditions for food, and
I'd
I
love to hear
mean,
some of the kind of weird ones. If anyone has any weird or strange recipes that their family does or weird traditions, maybe.
yeah,
I
why
love
not?
hearing those.
Well, in Germany, traditionally some wild game is usually on the menu or like a goose.
Hmm.
Last year, I really messed up the goose. Our friend
Well,
gifted us a Christmas goose, and I forgot to add the water during
it
the
was it was
baking
still
process.
edible. We had a lot of melted cheese.
Yeah, it worked well once you
Yeah.
added a lot of fat through the melted cheese.
Yeah.
This year, we'll be in Wisconsin visiting the
Hmm.
fam. I think some of them are in the chat right now, so we're excited to see you guys soon. My mom actually secured us some edible chestnuts from my uncle's farm in
Yeah.
Pennsylvania over the summer. So we're going to be roasting chestnuts by the fire, is
Be
the
my
goal at
first
least.
time.
Yeah, you've never done that, huh?
Mm-mm. I didn't actually realize that you could do that
Yeah, there's
because
edible
they
ones.
don't grow here, so it's not something I ever considered. So I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't know if you knew this, Lindy, but the chestnut trees, the native chestnut, used to be one of the most abundant trees in the US, in
Huh.
North America. I mean, it was as common as oaks and elms and, all the trees everyone knows.
Hmm.
But then they got hit pretty hard with a disease, I think from Asia, and kind of like what's happening to the ash tree right now.
Mm.
They just all kind of died out, and I know there's some efforts to reestablish them. There's like varieties now, I believe, that are more resistant.
Mm.
Um, but it's not like I don't know if it'll ever go back to what it used to be. I mean, when I
Right.
say they were everywhere. They were everywhere.
Everywhere.
That's what I've learned about them, at least. So if I'm wrong,
Gotcha.
chat, correct me, please.
Yeah. Thank you, chat.
Yeah. So before we get going though, let's pull out our dad jokes here. We're gonna need our
Oh.
dad jokes.
Oh, yes. Would you like to go first, Poldy?
Sure, I will go first because I have usually the best dad jokes, of course.
Yes, of
You know,
course.
just to lighten the mood a little bit. So
Because it's been so heavy.
so Lindy, um
Yes.
since you're an upholsterer and a seamstress, yeah, I
Yes.
think you'll like this one. So Christmas trees are really bad at sewing. Do you know why?
Why?
Because they always drop their needles.
that's,
Come on,
that's
this
pretty
one,
good.
this one was pretty good. I figured this one this time
I should,
might hit home.
I would actually
So
like to send that to some of my fabric distributors. That's pretty funny.
you should. I think you should end all your emails over the next few days with that. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was I thought it was pretty acorny, but a good one. A corny joke, a corny joke. Get it?
Wow.
I had two in there. All right, your turn. What you got
Okay.
for me?
What did one snowman say to the other?
What?
Really smells like carrots.
Oh, that's good because that's all they got for a nose.
I actually looked for a really long time for that joke, so
It's people don't like people don't know. It's kind of hard to find dad jokes, good ones.
yeah.
Some of them are so dumb,
Or
but
they're so long that it's like I couldn't say a 35-minute dad joke. Like my dad,
it'll be the
I know
whole
he'll listen to
episode.
this at some point. He's got a moth joke. I swear it takes an hour to tell.
Oh,
It's so
oh, yeah, I've
bad.
heard some of your dad's jokes. They're good. They're good, but long.
Yeah.
So, anyways, let's get into this episode. So,
Mhm.
the five species we're going to cover today, they're all edible wild plant species, and they are, drumroll please. First of all, the wild rose, then the pine tree, watercress, hackberry, and then persimmons. So some
Love
of these
persimmons.
we are pretty familiar with. We've foraged for ourselves, we've eaten ourselves. Other ones we haven't yet, but
Mhm.
they're on our future harvest list, and I've done a lot of research into them. Just like Gandalf in his library looking through books. Um,
Do you think Gandalf has a library?
well, he went to one library to look for the One Ring,
He
the
goes to the
info about
Elven
the One Ring.
library.
Yeah,
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 checks
yeah.
out.
So that I mean, I go to the Elven library to learn about foraging. At least
Yeah.
that's what plays through my head when I'm like at 11 p.m. looking through foraging books here in my office.
So, yeah, okay. Moving
So
on.
yeah, moving on. Let's start with the wild rose here. And man, for some reason the chat's not pulling up on my laptop or on
So
my
far, we've
computer.
got a couple people here and people that are very excited. So
Good.
that's
Well,
good.
I have my chat here on my phone, so I should be able
Mm,
to see
yep.
when it's coming through and be able to answer it. Now, wild rose, that's the first one we want to talk about. Um, and they have really become one of my favorite, like late season edible plants to forage for over the last couple of years. So the wild rose are in the Rosaceae family, the rose family, just like some of the other plants we've talked about in podcasts in the past and in in some of our vlogs on YouTube, like the serviceberry, the apples, the crab apples. Those are all in the rose family. The wild rose are perennial plants, which is great. I like looking for perennials
Mm-hmm.
because once you find your spots, they'll be there year after year. And, you do the work once, kind of figure out when it's time to harvest, and then you just come back when it's time to harvest. And you don't need to be out there putting a bunch of miles, boots in the ground and finding new spots all the time. So
Mm-hmm.
perennials are always a plus as a forager in my opinion. Now, they are native to the US and there are some invasive ones, and I'll get into one in a sec here. In North America, from my research, I found that there's about 50 different species of wild rose, and then
Ooh.
there's about 10 here in the Mountain West. We're in Montana. Now, they grow in a wide variety of habitats, and there's actually some that are found worldwide. So it's definitely, if you're listening outside of the US right now, You should look if there are wild roses in your area. I know Asia has a lot. So I was curious though when I heard that there were 10 wild rose species in the Mountain West. I'm like, okay, well, how many in Montana? So I like to go to the Montana Field Guide online, and I went through a whole list of plants in there, and I found five wild roses. So we have the prickly rose, the woods rose, the prairie rose, the Nootka rose, and the bald hip rose. A lot of these you can also find in many of the other states, and
Hmm.
I'm going to show some maps in a bit here, so you can follow along and see if they grow in your state. Now, in the winter for wild rose, what we're going after are the rose hips. So let me pull up some pictures of those.
They are
The rose
curvy little buggers, I tell you what. Those
curvy
hips,
little buggers.
those hips
Oh,
don't lie.
yeah, yeah. I see
There's
what
a
you
new
mean.
dad joke. There you
Yeah,
go. All right.
I mean that's why I have you here because you're the you bring the fun to these live streams.
You're
So, Lindy,
welcome.
can you see my
I
shared
can.
screen here?
Those are some really
So,
nice hips.
yeah, those are some real nice red hips.
Oof.
Um, on a snowy background, just to prove to you that you can, in fact, find these in winter. And they really pop in the winter, which is awesome. So, for those listening, what are rose hips? If you've never heard of them before, they're little round fruits, red to orange usually, that are found on the thorny rose bushes in the wild. And um, they have usually dried plant matter, dried leaves on the front. It's called the calyx. And ideally go on our YouTube channel right now if you're listening and you're watching, so you can see these pictures I'm sharing, or just look something up online. But here's another picture of rose hips in the snow. I actually photographed these when my brother and I were hunting this year, pretty far, like an hour and a half into the mountains, and you know, it's always nice to see this when you're hunting and getting skunked, because then you're like, oh, okay, I might be getting skunked hunting, but hey, look at all these rose hips I could
There
gather
is
right now.
life out here.
There's life
Wow,
indeed.
somewhere.
Um, let's pick up another picture or pull up another picture. Here's one. This
Whoa.
one's a bit younger, I would say. Not younger, just not as far in the season. That was earlier this year. So they can be harvested throughout fall and winter. Usually, prime time I would say is maybe November to get them, but I was just on a walk today and I found some. So it's December 19th and we're in Montana here. And yes, we get pretty harsh winters and we still had rose hips on the bushes. Now,
Mm-hmm.
actually, most people will wait until the frost and the snow comes and the cold comes to harvest these, because the longer they are on the bush and the colder it gets, the sweeter they get. So the frost is good in this case. And they might be a bit wrinkly and all that, which is totally fine. Let me see. I think I have some pictures of some wrinklier ones.
Just like little raisins.
Yeah, like right here. These, oh man, these are prime looking. But these are just fine if they're wrinkly. You just don't want to get them when they're black and have black splotches. And if you see that, open one up, and you might find some mold in the inside. And obviously, you don't want that. We
Mm-hmm.
don't want to eat the moldy ones at all. Um, that's something that I noticed on a good amount this year. Also, if you're not sure if they are ripe yet, what you can do is just kind of give them a little tuck, like a little pull. And if they come off real easily off the stem, you're good to go. If not, you might want to wait a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
And just like with so many other wild foods, some are a lot tastier than others.
Yum yum yum.
And you always just want to, I'm going to say this probably every podcast episode that when we talk about foraging, is just like harvest one, try one, maybe try a second and see how it tastes. And
Mm-hmm.
then if you like it, then fill your basket.
Mm-hmm.
But you always got to try it. And I also recommend finding the species that produce big, nice rose hips.
Mm-hmm.
You're just going to get the best bang for your buck that way. And the ones out here in Montana that I found now to be the best are the prickly rose and the Nootka rose. And I have some. some maps here to show people. So let me pull those up because earlier when I was getting ready for this live stream, I opened up my links, and of course the USDA website wasn't pulling up the maps. One of them loaded now, so um, that is the Nootka rose. That is the second largest rose hip here in Montana. Let me pull that up quick. With the prickly rose being a bit bigger from my experience now. Okay, where is it? Here, the Rosa. Oh no, Nootka rose, right? Yeah, here we go. Then can you see the map?
Yes, I can.
So the Nootka rose. Oh man, I forgot my. I printed out a piece of paper with all the states names on there so I can talk about it. Let me just pull one up. Um, because for the people listening, you're gonna want to know, uh, what states they can find what in. Um, so, but it's definitely more on the western side of the U.S. The Nootka rose, from what I've been finding now. And I mean, basically, you can just draw a line down the middle for this one, and you'll kind of see it
Mm-hmm.
um, on the map there. Oh, come on! Why can't I find every map I'm looking at right now? They're trying to make me pay for. What is that all about?
Whoa.
Or the good old Wikipedia.
Who has to pay
Good
for
old
maps these
Wikipedia.
days?
So here we go. I got a good one. All right, Montana has them. Then Wyoming, Colorado, the whole like West Coast, California. They all got this Nootka rose. So if you live in one of these states, definitely worth looking for. It looks like also Canada up there on the West Coast has some of these.
And all the way up to
This one,
Alaska.
this one is pretty big, like I mentioned. Let me pull up the next rose here, the prickly rose. That one is even bigger. Um, Here, let's pull that up. It should be coming through. So this is Rosa acicularis, also called bristly rose, and that one on the map here definitely found it around the Great Lakes, and then kind of the upper half of the U.S., like over Nebraska, Montana down to Wyoming, and then kind of like draw a line straight down from Wyoming. So I would say in about half of the U.S. states you can find this one native.
They like the
This
Rocky
one,
Mountains looks like.
yeah, yep, that's definitely seems to be one in the Rocky Mountains. This one, I think, is the one that's the most worth your time here if you're foraging in Montana,
Mm.
just because of the size. Let's see if they show here how big the rose hips get. I think it's like 15 to 20 millimeters or something like that.
What is that
Yes,
in
I'm
inches?
I don't know in inches. I'm German. I still don't. I don't know why they do the not don't do the metric system here in the U.S. It's just so much easier in my opinion.
Oh
But
man, I
anyway, so
think that's
those
so much
two.
harder.
The reason I bring this up is just to show you that these two are definitely worth your time. The bigger
Mm.
ones, and actually there is an ornamental variety that grows native in Eastern Asia, but can also be found here in the U.S. Feral, and that one is the rugosa rose,
But goes a
and
rose.
this one is really worth your time. And in every book I read, I've never eaten this one or found it, but in every book I read, this one supposedly has
Whoa.
the best rose hips, and they can get up to 2 inches, believe it or not. That's
That's-
big. Two
That is a
inches,
fruit.
yeah, that's really worth your time.
That
Um,
is big, 2 inches.
real big for a rose hip, that is. Um, they're very fleshy
Sorry.
and and easy to process compared to some of the native varieties, and that's why I think going after bigger ones is a is the move. Just because rose hips have a lot of seeds in them, and I'll show you that quick too. Why not? The seeds. Here's a picture. I got a picture of the seeds. So there's really not that much flesh in these native ones, unfortunately. Um, but on some of the bigger ones, you're going to get a good amount of fruit, not just seeds. And
Hmm.
this Rosa rugosa, the one I just showed, the big one with the 2 inch wide rose hips. That one on the inside, it's supposed to not have a bunch of seeds, and it's just you're gonna get a lot of fruit out of that one. It's supposed to taste really really good. That one you can find around the Great Lakes and then also on the east and west coast, like right along the coast. That's kind of where it's become feral, and they actually also call them beach plums
Hmm.
because they love growing along the water like that. So
They're
definitely
almost
one
the
to check
size of a
out.
plum.
Yeah, I mean, if you live on any
Mm.
of those areas, I'm jealous. And well, I mean, we're going to Wisconsin. That's right in Lake Michigan here. We should maybe go and see if we can find some for the
Mm-hmm.
winter here. And if we do, we're gonna bring some home. Just a suitcase full of rose
Yeah.
hips. Can you
We gotta
imagine at the
get a
at the
second bag.
TSA? They're like, what's going on here? Um, do you think they're gonna bust us?
They
You
bring
just
in a
open up.
drug dog to smell all the
Yeah,
rose hips.
yeah, for real though. Now, beyond these species I just showed, there's also the multiflora rose, and that one is a nasty invasive here in the U.S. As far as I know, I'm gonna pull up a map, but pretty sure it can be found in almost every state in the US as an invasive. And since it is invasive, you don't, you want to harvest as much as you can. Just pick them all, and burn down the bush afterwards. you know, from what I understand, this one is the multiflora rose is a pretty like nasty invasive. It outcompetes a lot of native plants along
Mm.
fence rows and whatnot, and not really one we want at all. That one is actually native to Japan,
Mm.
and but one I think it's probably one that you're gonna find pretty easily if you're new to wild rose foraging. Now, the most exciting part about the rose hips are really, the flavor. I would say the amount you can get in a shorter period of time. I've never done a timed study of like how many I can pick in a certain amount of time, but in Tom Elpel's book I think he says he picks about 3 quarts of them in an hour, which that's a lot for a wild. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot. We're out there picking huckleberries, and you get like a cup an hour. Um,
If you're lucky.
unless you're in like a really like northwestern Montana, you can make out like a bandit. You'll get a
No, you
lot more,
can't.
but
There's no fruit in Montana. Never seen it.
Montana sucks. Yeah, you
Mm-mm.
don't want to come to Montana at
Super
all.
bad.
There's
Super
nothing
bad.
here, just grizzly bears and harsh winters and a super volcano.
Yeah.
So don't come to Montana.
Yeah.
But the most exciting part beyond all that for the rose hips is really their nutrient profile. They're super high in vitamin C. In fact, I have a study here that claims that they are one of the most abundant natural sources of vitamin C.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to share that
Which is
study.
why skincare professionals love rosehip oil.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. For the
Yeah.
vitamin C.
Well, the I know you don't you have a skincare product,
Mm-hmm. I have rosehip oil.
rosehip oil? Yeah, that's
Mm-hmm.
one thing they make out of it.
Yep.
But in this study, they show that, let's see, where was it? And I guess the chat is saying right now it's a bit delayed. Sorry, guys. We got the good internet. We got to figure something out here. I'm even using an Ethernet cable now, so trying to really bring down the uh, the technical difficulties here. Where is this? Here we go. Wait, I'm looking at this study right now. Did I link the right one? Oh man, I might have chosen the wrong one.
Oh no.
Let me look it up. 20. It should be 20 times. Oh, I have the wrong one. Dang it. Well, maybe I'll link the other one later. Let me just see if I can find it because I want to show people. I want to show them the real deal. Oh, bear with me.
No
I have a
problemo.
because I just
Ooh.
want to make sure
Well,
we're
while we
showing the right
wait,
stuff.
while Poldy finds one, I've got another dad joke for you.
Oh yeah.
What do you get when you cross a snowman with a vampire?
What do you get?
Frostbite.
Hey,
Ah,
that's
wow.
good. That is really good. Well, I'm slow, and thanks for trying to save the awkward silence here during the stream. Um, I think I got it. Let's see. Let's look it up. 20. I remember. Yeah, here. No.
Oh, I've got another one. What's Santa's favorite kind of music?
What is it?
Rap.
Rap.
Like wrapping
That's good.
paper, you know?
Yeah, I get it. Well, man, I thought I had the right link here, but I don't. But I remember it from memory, and I will find the study, and I'll maybe try to, add it to the description here
Just went
of the
Liam Neeson
podcast.
with
But
the
well, it basically,
I will
well,
find you.
oh, I will find you. Yeah, I will find you. Study. But they mentioned that the rosips are 20 times the amount of vitamin C as an orange. Like if you're
Mm.
comparing weight to weight, like weight
If
of
you're
orange to
comparing
rose
apples to
hips.
oranges.
Yeah, if you're comparing rose hips to oranges, 20 times as much.
Mm.
So
Wow, that's crazy.
that's a lot. I
In a
mean,
tiny little
people.
thing.
Well, I'm bringing this up because people always like, oh, you should eat your oranges to get your vitamin C. Uh, biatch, you should eat your you should eat
No.
your rose hips to get your vitamin C. And I bet you that indigenous people around northern climates, they must have loved rose hips in the winter to get that vitamin C, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
I mean, we didn't have
especially,
oranges growing in Montana when settlers weren't here. You know, cold and flu
yeah,
season comes and they're eating rose hips.
yeah, exactly. And probably the innards of caribou. Did you know that?
Yeah.
Some native, like the Sami people and stuff, they would actually take the fermented, like inside of the guts of deer and stuff, and eat that for to get their vitamin C. Or you could eat rose
Yum.
hips. So
Yum.
I see in the chat, Mike Mason is asking, "What's the vitamin C about in the skincare product?" Lindy, do you know?
Meaning, like,
Let's look it up.
what do you mean?
Like, well, he's asking like, what's good about vitamin C for your skin?
Oh, it's supposed to be super good for your skin. I don't know exactly why. If I was a cosmetologist, maybe, but that's one of the only ones that I use. Just rosehip oil usually on my face, and since doing that, my skin has been not terribly broken out and very, very, very soft.
Well, that's cool.
hmm I think it helps
Um,
a lot with acne too.
so Harvard Healthier is they have an article, "Why is vitamin C important for skin health?" So take it with a grain of salt. I'm just pulling this up now and while we're doing this stream, but it says topical vitamin C is a science-backed dermatologist favorite ingredient that may help slow early skin aging, prevent sun damage, and improve the appearance of wrinkles, dark spots, and acne. Well,
Wow,
there you go.
I'm gonna be young forever.
Forever young. She's gonna be forever young.
I'm gonna look like I'm in my 20s when I'm 80, and people are gonna be super confused. Rosehip
They should
oil.
have listened to this episode.
Yeah.
Well, now let's get into some food uses for rose hips. Lindy, that's your cue.
Wow. Thanks, Poldy. So you can eat them raw, and we do recommend you do at least a test each bush, obviously. We found when we were out there this year that, you walk up the hill 20 yards and you've got a different type of rose hip and it tastes totally different. So definitely test them out. They have a really nice, pleasant, like fruity, kind of floral
Hmm.
flavor. It doesn't taste like a rose smells. It's I don't really know how to describe it, but it's got a nice fruit to it.
Yeah.
hmm there's not a ton of flesh on a lot of the native varieties that we've talked about. Um, and some of the seeds can cause discomfort for some people. I know Poldy, if you eat quite a few of them raw, they don't feel terribly
Yeah.
great for
You
you,
gotta
but
be.
I haven't had a problem.
Yeah, it really depends on the
hmm
person, but yeah, just be aware that the seeds, if you eat them raw, could have some digestive problems
Yeah.
or cause some digestive problems.
hmm
I edited a video yesterday where that kind of goes over that experiment when I tried that,
Mm.
you know, eating the big one raw.
And I know, Poldy, you do have a video if you want to pull that up about how to be
Yeah.
able to get the fleshy parts out without the seeds.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because there
Hmm.
is some technique. It is a little, in my mind, disgusting to watch. it's like
Well,
it's like those videos online for Dr. Pimple Popper. To me,
it
go
does
ahead
kind of
and
look
play
like,
it.
well, we'll play it, and
Yeah,
they'll be able to see it. This is from Forage for Knowledge, who is a really good forager, and I've talked to him. I think he's coming on the podcast soon, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'll have to actually
dope.
plan it with him. But I'm going to try to talk through this for the people that will be listening to this later on the audio. So he's grabbing this rose hip. I think it's a multiflora rose, and holding it between
Blech.
his both his hands, index and thumb, and just kind of slowly pushing from the bottom up. And on the tip of the rose hip, it's squeezing out like a sausage of rose hip flesh, but it looks like candy. And this is probably the best way to just get the flesh out without having to worry about the the actual, seeds and all that. I tried this a couple times though, and it doesn't work with everyone. Like every single rose hip, you kind of got to find the
Ugh.
perfect one, honestly, to try this with. So
Yeah,
there you go. There you
it looks
go.
like a little maggot like being squished out of an apple to me.
Yeah.
I'm
Um,
not a
it
like
looks. I
it's
mean,
very cool, but I don't like it.
it looks gross, but it is. It kind of looks like candy. Let's be real. Like in my opinion, it looks like candy. So
No.
no.
Mm-mm.
Well,
Anyways,
anyways, beyond
moving
doing
on.
that and eating them raw like that, what else can
hmm
we make with them?
One thing that's really nice is rosehip tea.
Yep.
And you can eat the soaked rose hips at the end, which is really nice. It's kind of like a double whammy.
Yep.
Many foragers will turn them into a thick rose hip juice. Then you can
Yeah, and
use
I
that
get
juice for jelly or wine or kind of whatever you're feeling.
and that's I'll talk on that real quick because I've done this before.
hmm
You basically take your rose hips. Um, Ideally, if you got them before the frost and they aren't really soft yet, put them in the freezer overnight. And we forgot to mention that that will actually mimic that effect that happens when the frost hits outside, and they'll get sweeter and softer.
hmm
And then put them in there overnight, take them out, cut them in half, get that calyx, that leafy part in the tip off, and then just put some water on them. Put them in a saucepan, put some water on them, simmer over medium heat for like 20-25 minutes, and after like 5 to 10 minutes, go to town on them with a potato masher, mash them all up,
Yeah.
let them cool for like an hour or so, and they'll get thick. Like the liquid will get thick because all that, I think there's a bunch of pectin in there as well, just like with the crab apples. Um, and then you can strain that through a cheesecloth and squeeze hard, and you'll get that rose hip pulp slash juice out, and the seeds will be left behind. And then, like you said, you can use that for all sorts of things.
hmm
The one that I haven't tried yet that I'm very, very excited about trying with this
Mm.
is a rose hip ketchup,
Oof. Sounds pretty
right?
good.
That sounds pretty cool. I'm not a big like ketchup person, processed
No.
food person, but making my own ketchup, that would be pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Especially with
beyond,
rose hips.
yeah, especially with rose hips. And then the last thing in rose hips I just wanted to mention here is that I think they have some great value for homesteaders. I'm always dreaming of that future property, those 100 acres one day, hopefully. And how can I turn them into a wildlife paradise slash foraging paradise? And I think rose hips have, or just wild roses have a place on a property like that. Not only will they provide food for you, but they can also provide like a living, you can turn them into a living hedge with all the
hmm
thorns and just kind of create barriers on your property. But they'll also be, a place for wildlife to find or seek shelter and eat. So you're going to be attracting some deer with these.
hmm
Yep. And we're gonna drop. I already have it uploaded on YouTube. It's probably gonna come out in the next 2 days or so. But we have a whole vlog video of on wild roses, where we're gonna be showing you how to identify them and all that, and talk a bit more about the rose hips in there. So stay tuned for that. That'll be on the channel. All right.
Mhm.
Wow, we talked way longer about rose hips than I wanted to, but that's good, right?
Yeah, we'll
Um,
start flying.
yeah. Well, no, 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 we're not. We
Slowly,
gotta, we gotta
slowly
deliver
flying.
value. We gotta. I mean, if you're listening right now, we're only on 1 out of 5 plants, and it's okay though because
We're having a good
after this,
time.
we're having a good time, and
Yeah.
I'm trying. I want you to walk away with the, like I said at the beginning, I want that inner winter forager to be awakened. Okay.
Yeah.
So next up, we're going to talk about pine trees and
Yum.
specifically eating pine bark.
Yummy.
Pause. Eating pine bark. Lindy is very excited. Sounds so good, right?
It
Eating
sounds
bark.
strange.
You've never done this.
Mm-mm.
I ate pine bark once on a foraging walk in Washington when I did like a foraging class, and I don't remember what species we ate it from, but it was good. We just ate it raw. It was a little bit sweet, definitely fibrous. Um, to me, this is more of a survival food, honestly, not something that I would necessarily go out and harvest in mass. But our hunter gatherer ancestors did, and there's still forests in the US, and I have some proof to show you later about this. There are forests where you can still find trees from hundreds of years ago, like old trees that have markings on them from indigenous people harvesting the bark. That's pretty cool.
Super cool.
That's super cool. And supposedly, the word uh, Adirondack, like the mountain range, Adirondack, that is derived from a Native American word that meant eater of tree bark. So it was kind of like a slur, like an insult that some tribes
Yeah.
had for the Native Americans in that region.
You eater
But
of tree bark, you.
little did they know that the tree bark can be a great food source. So
Hmm.
what are you going after here is not the outer tough bark on the pine tree, nor like the inside hard, the hardwood that you're burning. What you want is that middle layer, the inner bark they call it, and that's made up of the cambium and the phloem. I hope I'm saying that right, phloem. And let me just share a little thing here from the USDA that kind of goes over the anatomy of a tree. So there's a little graphic here that kind of shows you the different layers. The cambium, so the inner bark, they say here, or phloem, is a pipeline through which food is passed to the rest of the tree. It lives for only a short time, then dies and turns to cork to become part of the protective outer bark. And then the other inner layer here that is edible is the cambium cell layer, and this is a growing part of the trunk. It annually produces new bark and new wood in response to hormones that pass down through the phloem with food from the leaves. These hormones, called auxins, stimulate growth in cells, and auxins are produced by leaf buds at the end of branches as soon as they start growing in the spring. So I looked up multiple things on this, and there are some books and articles that will tell you that you're supposed to eat the cambium layer, and some that you say that you're supposed to eat the phloem. Um, I think both. My like what I'm taking away from all that is that you can eat both. The cambium supposedly is paper thin, and the cambium is what was mentioned most in the scientific anthropological articles I found, and I found quite a few, and they always mentioned the cambium. So I think traditionally the cambium was more what was eaten. Um, so that's just something to know. I'm pretty sure both are just based on what people are writing. Both is edible, and like I said, I've only eaten this once, and I can't remember what part or which one
Mm.
we ate. But I got another thing to share here. I'm gonna just pull up quick.
I think the
One
only
of the
time I've watched anybody eat tree bark was on maybe Alone, the TV show. And
There you go.
the
They
guy
know
went,
it's good.
well, he had to get called out because it was going to rupture his intestines. Because
Oh
he
yeah.
ate only tree bark
No,
for
you're really selling this to the
like
listeners right
two
now.
or 3 weeks.
Yeah,
So he had
that's
nothing else to help
that's
him move. So don't
that's
do
that.
that.
I don't think that's good. That's
No.
like I said, survival food here.
His whole strategy was just
Survival
bad.
food.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, in this thing I just pulled up, it's called Montana Indians to History and Location.
Mm.
A really cool article by the Indian Educational for or Indian Education for All. I don't know. I can't read here. What's the Montana Office of Public Instruction is the author, and I took out a quote because in it they talk about a mention of a creation myth told by Blackfeet elder Ella C. Clark in 1953, and that was later published in one of her books called Indian Legends from the Northern Rockies. And the story goes, quote, the first people were poor and naked, and they did not know how to do anything for themselves. Old Man showed them the roots and berries and said, you can eat these. Then he pointed to certain trees and said, when the bark of these trees is young and tender, it is good. Then you can peel it off and eat it. So to me, that clearly means that this was part of their traditional diet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's in their creation story, it must have been a pretty important food, like otherwise it
Definitely.
wouldn't be in there. So I thought that was pretty cool. And you can harvest this inner bark of the pine trees from living trees year round or freshly broken off branches, like if you take some branches or after a storm, maybe. So, winter is fair game. Definitely a good one to harvest in winter, I would say. But the best time to really get this inner bark from everything I read now about it is the spring, early spring to mid spring to late spring, kind of that time. So again, definitely one you can harvest in the winter, especially if you're in a survival situation. But if you're really looking for the top quality pine bark, the best pine bark out there with the most nutrition and flavor, spring is the best. You do need to be mindful though of how you harvest this stuff because if you do it wrong, you can literally kill the tree, and we don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, hug a tree, don't kill a tree. Um, how do you avoid killing the tree? Well, you do not want to collar the tree, meaning when you take this bark, do not cut around the whole circumference of the tree because that will, since in this inner bark, like I mentioned earlier, that's where all the nutrients and water flows from the roots to all the branches and back. And if you collar it, if you cut around the whole circumference, you're going to cut that off and
Yeah.
you're going to kill that tree because it won't be able to share nutrients. So instead, what you're going to want to do is cut like a rectangular vertical strip, maybe like 4 inches wide and 10 inches long, depending on how big that tree is, obviously, the trunk. And just cut in there with a sharp knife, get all the way down to the wood, cut that chunk out, and kind of peel it off. And then that inner layer will be, you know, it'll be stuck to the outer bark, and it should be like a creamy color, creamy white, and feel a bit rubbery. You can just kind of like peel that off, and then from there you can kind of see what is the cambium layer, what is the phloem. Like I said, I haven't done this enough to really give you great advice there on how to tell the difference there, but there's a bunch of videos online to check out and learn more about that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just don't kill that tree.
Yeah.
Just
Trees
you,
are
you want
friends, not
yeah,
pets. We don't put
exactly,
collars on our trees,
yeah.
you know?
Um, now
No, that's pretty funny. Come
yeah,
on.
I sorry, I was reading through my notes. It's registered, jokes registering now. That was pretty funny.
Mm.
Now, uh, if you know more about the phloem though and the cambium, like that distinction there, drop in the chat now or in the comments later when you're watching this the replay. I do want to quickly mention how to actually you can eat it raw, but the best way to actually eat it from everything I've read now is to fry this tree bark in butter, tallow. I saw videos of people even taking like rocks, putting them in the fire, nice flat rocks, and then cooking that tree bark right on those
Mm.
rocks with some fat, putting a little bit of spices on there, and you get tree jerky. Like,
Hmm,
pretty cool. I mean,
that would be kind of fun.
Lindy did a pretty bad job at selling it to you earlier when she told about that, when she
Well,
talked
I
about
think
that little thing in Alone, that little scene.
the point would be don't eat it for weeks on end straight with no other food
Yeah.
because it's just
But
not going to
hey,
pass.
now if I'm telling you though, tree jerky, that sounds pretty appetizing, right?
That does sound
Um,
pretty good, actually.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's like when you cook it like that, it's supposed to be really crunchy and kind of like a chip, like a potato chip.
I like
So
chips.
yeah, we don't really eat them, so this might be a better way to do it. Now that's all nice and fun, right? Tree
Hmm.
jerky, but as I was looking into this more, I had that one. I found one thing that I want to talk about now that just blew my mind, like literally, like, and, and that is pine bark bread. This is a traditional food that historically we know people used throughout many places in the world, and I have this X post here that I'm just going to read off quick.
That sounds very interesting and very up my alley.
So the Sami people, they say, so this is the X account Archaeohistories, and there's other sources you can read for this. But they say that the Sami people, an indigenous group in northern Scandinavia, have long relied on pine and birch bark as staple foods. This practice of using bark, specifically the intersection known as the phloem, in food preparation, has proved essential to Nordic farmers in times of famine and food rationing. In Finland, pine bark flour is known as petujahua. I
Ooh,
butchered
that
that
was
so bad.
really good.
And produces petuleipa, pine bark bread. So that's the Finnish word for that. It became particularly prevalent during a 2 year famine at the end of the 16th century. Desperately in need of grain substitutes, bakers made loaves of bread from a flour of dried pulverized bark. Foragers stripped the outer bark of local trees to get to the phloem, which they then dried and roasted. To make the flour, they stuffed the lot into a bag and hammered it into dust. In the 20th century, wartime food rationing sparked another bark bread revival. Resourceful cooks again began to cut flour stores with the tree meal. Some Scandinavian bakers still worked with this traditional ingredient by choice, adding small amounts to grain. Today's chefs also take advantage of high powered blenders rather than busting out the hammer. Boring. Gotta do this the traditional way. While ratios of 15 to 85 are common in modern bark bread, traditional bark bread could have contained more than 50% bark meal, yielding a bitter, fibrous loaf. Yikes. Upon biting into homemade old school bark bread, one reviewer determined it has a wooden taste to it.
Hmm.
And I know they would make kind of like a flat bread out of it. Pretty cool. I mean, I try it. I
Famine
think that,
food.
yeah, not just famine food. I mean, bring back pine bar cookies for Christmas.
I would
Why
try
don't
that
we do
too.
that? Why don't we do that? I think that's a great idea.
I am very
Um,
curious to see what the actual flavor of it is, and do you make it a herby loaf or let the pine fully sing, or what do you do?
it's supposed to have a bit of a semi-sweet taste
Hmm.
from what I read about it.
Yeah,
And it
we
actually
definitely need
has
to try that.
the cool thing is, I mean, why it was a good famine food? One, it was available, but two, lots of calories in that,
Hmm.
and nutrients and minerals, but also lots of fiber. So could be a bit rough on your digestion, especially if you don't eat a lot of fiber. Like
Yeah.
this might be a bit.
There are some people out there though that really try to get as much fiber in a day as they can. So if that's you,
Yeah,
it might be kind of perfect. Definitely
yeah,
give it a
but there's
shot.
different levels of fiber. There's more digestible fiber, more fiber. How do I say this? Some fiber is more digestible than other fibers, and I don't know what kind of fibers is in here, but I think as
One way
long
to
as you're
find
not,
out.
as long as you're not eating that inner wood, I think you're good to go. You know.
Mm.
Um, Now, like I mentioned, to my surprise, I did find a lot of scientific papers that talk about the usage of pine bark as food. And I looked at like five different papers, and the ones I saw mentioned a lot were Scots pine, white pine, lodgepole pine, pinyon pine, and also ponderosa pine. Ponderosa and lodgepole we have a lot here, and also white pine in Montana. I did find some blogs that said that ponderosa could be toxic.
Mm.
Those were just blogs. Almost all of the scientific articles mentioned ponderosa specifically, and I have one here. Um, Let me pull it up quick. This one is actually published by the USDA, called Bark Peeling, Food Stress, and Tree Spirits: The Use of Pine Inner Bark for Food in Scandinavia and North America. And I have a little quote I took out, and they say, quote, that in the most recent investigations to be cited here, Ostlund et al. Studied 138 bark peeled ponderosa pine trees at 4 sites in the Barb Marshall Wilderness in northwestern Montana. That's right by us.
Mm-hmm.
And obtained peeling dates ranging from 1665, most likely the oldest bark peeling scar on a pine tree in North America recorded so far, to 1938. It is important to note that so far only very few studies have been undertaken to analyze the real time depth and temporal patterns of bark peeling in North America. Only a small fraction of the existing bark peelings have been dated, and only at a limited number of sites. Researchers have examined the locations of bark peel trees to gain information on past harvesting. White reported that peel trees could be found along nearly every valley in western Montana and northern Idaho, and that this area seemed to be the center of inner bark utilization in the west. Park peeled tre- park, sorry, Bark peeled trees are commonly clustered along major streams and rivers. However, the highest concentrations are found in open south-facing areas with gentle, oh man, 100, oh, sorry, with gentle topographic and close to water areas that were probably near campsites. There was like in my quote, I had some weird numbers from the copy and pasting, messed me up. But yeah, I mean, that's right by us here in Montana. It's pretty cool. I kind of want to go and try to find some of these trees. Um,
Definitely.
Now, they mentioned specifically ponderosa pine in here. So, I
Hmm.
assume they ate them. Now, they might have used them for medicine. And I know I read in some of the papers that they used the pine bark as wrapping material. So, who knows? I kind of want to go out and do an experiment and just try some of the ponderosa pine um, bark, the inner bark, and eat it. I just I talked with our buddy Jacob,
Mm-hmm.
who studies ethnobotany, Native American ethnobotany, and he was also like, I don't know what will be in there that really could cause an issue.
Hmm.
So I'm we're just gonna try it. I don't know if I trust just like these blogs. I'd
Right.
rather listen to the scientific studies here.
Hmm.
So that concludes edible wild plant number 2 in the winter foraging series. Lindy, take us to the third.
Next up, we're looking at watercress, which I think a lot of
Wait,
people
say that again.
will be looking at watercress.
Crest,
Cress. Did I
watercress.
put a T at the end of it?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. Not a crest, but a
It's like
cress.
I was gonna say like it's like there's sometimes people say like Americans will say certain words. Oh, I'm blanking on one. Never mind. Just forget all that. But
Moving on.
yeah. Moving on.
Which I think a lot of people know about this plant already. You can find them in a lot of health food stores or maybe your local farmer's market, depending on where you are, even if you're not a forager yet.
Yep.
Um, yeah. And I think, Poldy, you've harvested this in Wisconsin, correct?
Yeah, I
Before?
used to harvest a lot of this when I was in the driftless region of Wisconsin. There's a bunch of trout streams with really good water and lots of watercress.
Mm-hmm.
Really good watercress.
And the scientific name, I'm probably going to butcher it. Just hang in there. It's Nastirum officinale.
It sounded
What's that?
pretty good. I
Does that
think that's
sound
how you
pretty
say
good?
it.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. I practiced it a lot. So if it's wrong, it's,
Last night I woke up and I
yeah.
heard a voice from the closet. Nostridium officinalis. Nostridium officinalis. I
I
thought
turned
I was
into
in Harry
Harry
Potter.
Potter.
Thought I was watching Harry Potter. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it's in the mustard family. So it's got a nice kind of spicy flavor like mustard.
Yep.
Grows in water, usually creeks around springs and rivers, which is part of why it's so nice to harvest in winter. Could you pull up some of those photos here for
Oh yeah.
the
Yep. Yep.
viewers
Yep.
to
Yep. Yep.
see?
Let me close some of the other
Yeah, as far as
things. We're
identification
pulling up
goes.
iNaturalist here.
hmm There we go. So it's got some nice medium tone to kind of bright green leaves. The leaves are shiny and have nice deep lobes.
Yep.
The
So here you can kind of see
stems,
those lobes.
hmm the stems with the leaves creep through the water like they're nice little vines. And then the flowers are white when they bloom. And the flowers grow in clusters with four petals, just
Yep.
like a crucifix, like a little cross,
Like the
which
watercress, right? The crest.
crest. Maybe that's why I was saying crest, like the family crest. Anyways, they are, like I said, in the mustard family, and they tend to grow in big patches that kind of carpet
Yeah, like
over the
look at
top of
that
the
picture
water.
here. I've seen giant patches of these.
hmm
They can be, they are invasive.
Crazy.
We should say that they are invasive
Yep,
and they can be an issue in some areas.
definitely. As far as that goes, you should just kind of read your surroundings because they can help with soil erosion in certain places. So if you're having problems with soil erosion, maybe you keep them there. They have roots that go down and help keep things where they should be. But if not, it might be nice to get rid of some.
Yeah,
Um,
it's kind of like a double-edged sword. On the one hand,
hmm
it can help stream banks just because it keeps them from eroding, but also they're invasive and they can outcompete the native plants.
Yep. Yep. And then, Poldy, if you could bring up our distribution map, if we have that one for the
Yes, I'm
watercress,
just
that
gonna
would
want to
be
show this
awesome.
quick here, this picture, because you can kind of
Mm,
see how they're growing in the water.
definitely.
Touch on that real quick, or do you want? I can do that.
Yeah, go for
I
it.
can see it quick too. So like these will grow in the water, um, and also above the water, but they'll kind of be vining through the water. And in the winter, you'll see them more like underwater. In the summer, when there's a lot of plant growth, that's kind of when you start to see them above water. So I just wanted
hmm
to touch on that quick because that'll be important when we talk about harvesting later.
hmm
What did you want me to pull up? Oh,
Yep.
the map. Let's
Yep
see if the
for
USDA
where they
map's coming
are.
through here, or if it's the USDA maps are working again. Let's
Whoa,
go. Let's go. Let's go.
they heard our call.
Yeah, they're earlier they were not working at all. Here we go. Can you see it?
Oh yeah, they are everywhere except for
They
North
are
Dakota.
literally everywhere. Yeah, North Dakota's
Yeah,
the one
that's what I
lonely
was reading. I
state.
They don't know why not North Dakota, but North Dakota, you lucked out. Sorry about that. Come to Montana for a minute.
Otherwise, they are
Um,
invasive in all lower 48 states and parts of Canada.
mhm, yep. They are considered to be a very nutritious wild plant.
Yep.
And when you harvest it, you know, it's got a really nice potent flavor. So it's great for different recipes. It's got kind of like a almost horseradish kind of flavor, but not quite as potent as a horseradish.
Yep.
Sometimes it can be a little bit bitter. It can be eaten raw and also cooked. As far as that goes, you want to make sure that you're harvesting from, good clean water sources.
Very important.
Very important. You can get very sick by eating, especially stagnant water or drinking stagnant water. Um,
Well, you wouldn't be drinking it, but you might get
but it's on the plant,
bacteria
so
from stagnant water or
mhm.
parasites
Yep,
on these
yep, yep.
plants.
Um, as far as food uses go, so you can make a really nice, refreshing salad if you like
Yep.
salads. If not, you can do like a sourdough sandwich. Or the first thing that came to my mind was we used to go for four-wheeler trips when we were kids, and we'd go up to the Pryor Mountains. My mom would pack these little pita bread deals and stuff it with like lunch meat and cheese and microgreens and dressing. So you can
Mm,
make a uh, dressing with the watercress and put that on top with your little microgreen watercress. It'd just be super nice, kind of
that would be
spicy,
really good.
right?
Yeah, they are
Super
kind of like a
tasty.
microgreen. That's kind of
Yeah.
what they look like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
And also, like what I've done in the past is like you just saute them and make like cook a trout because you catch them in you find them in trout streams
Mhm.
often. Make a little bed of greens on top of that trout fillet. Ooh,
Ooh,
now we're
yeah.
talking.
Sounds like
Or
tasty.
salmon, you know.
Nice. You can also use it as like a watercress soup. I think, Poldy, you've made that a few
Yep,
times, correct?
yep.
Yeah.
Made watercress soup. Very good
Yep.
soup. Also,
Um,
did you mention the blanching and pureeing it into sauces?
no, I kind of mentioned it for the pita that you could make your own kind of sauce with it, but you can blanch it, yeah, like Poldy said, and turn it into its own little sauce. When I think of that, I think of like a pesto.
Yeah, pesto or even like a salad
Hmm.
dressing because it's got that mustardy flavor.
Hmm. Definitely. Super
And
tasty.
I gotta just back to the harvesting real quick. Just there's some precautions you have to take. Like we mentioned already, watch out with stagnant water. Um, Generally, it's best to get the watercress that has grown above the water, because then you avoid, bacteria and parasites. One parasite you supposedly can get from watercress is a liver fluke, which is a nasty parasite,
Mm.
but they need water to survive. And you can, I mean, liver flukes, you can see them sometimes in the livers of wild game. Um, so cooking the watercress will kill all that, the bacteria, all the little parasites and all that. Or, if you want to be safe, just make sure you're inspecting your plants. Um, Make sure you're harvesting from above water if you're really worried about it. In the winter, like I said, a lot of them will be underwater, so just like cook it at that point. I would just cook
Hmm.
it, make sure you're good to go. Also, the liver fluke, I've never heard of anyone getting liver flukes from eating watercress, and I have a lot of friends who eat these every year. But I did read that they don't really survive in the northern climates, so take that with a grain of salt. I
Hmm.
think just be safe and cook it. And then also the other thing to watch out for is poison water hemlock that grows along water. That's like one of the most poisonous plants in the world. Um, that's one you need to learn if you're a forager because you're going to encounter it a lot. No matter what you forage for, you're gonna encounter it. So it looks different in watercress, but you just don't want to accidentally, have some in your foraging basket, I guess.
Take a
So that's
bite.
just we're gonna do an episode at one point, where we go deep into that. And actually, I did a episode with Jesse from Feral Foraging on YouTube about elderberries, and the elderberries are kind of like they look like the hemlocks. So um, we have a whole segment in there showing pictures and showing the differences. If you want to check that out, learn more about it. Yeah.
Hmm.
All right. I think that's all we had for watercress, right?
Yeah. What is
All
next
right.
on our winter
Next on the
harvesting
list
grocery list?
is the common hackberry, Celtis
Mm.
occidentalis, aka
Yeah.
the false elm.
Nice.
Now we're getting into the plants that neither of us have tried. So I just want to be upfront with that. But like I said, I've been doing a lot of research on these, and um, all the info here is coming from several books and several articles online. So I always try to find a good mix of sources, primary, secondary sources. I know there's about 6 species of hackberry in North America. The common hackberry is the most widespread. There's also some native species in Southern Europe and Asia, and the Romans uh, loved hackberry. Let me pull up some pictures here. I'm going to
Be
stop
the
sharing
perfect plant for
this.
you then.
Yep. Why? Because of my Roman heritage.
Yes.
Yes. So here we go. Show you some pictures. It can be a bush or a tree. Let's see. Here's the hackberry.
Mm.
Now, um, I did read one of Sam Thayer, legendary U.S. forager. He's got several books. He's got a whole chapter about these in one of his books. And get this, Lindy.
Mm.
So in this chapter, it starts out like this quote: On the streets of La Crosse, Wisconsin, hundreds of these old hackberries can be seen today, towering gracefully above the homes and churches, some approaching 3 feet in diameter and exceeding 100 feet in height. When I read that, I had to take a pause and close the book, and I had to just like smack myself because I lived in La Crosse, Wisconsin for 4 years and I never knew about these. So if only I would have read that chapter a long time ago, I think this would have been a winter foraging staple for me for sure. And again, we're going to be in Wisconsin here, and
Woohoo!
we're going to probably have to go visit some of my friends in La Crosse. So we should keep an eye out for hackberries while we're there the
Mm-hmm.
next few in the next week here. So I showed some of the pictures. Here's another one. Let's uh let's talk about the distribution quick. So it is found in most of the U.S. I think almost every state. Let's see if the USDA map it is working again. I think no, that's not right. It's just showing me half the map here. That's not
USDA
right.
maps. Come on, man.
Can you see that?
Yep.
So this is the common hackberry found in almost every state in the U.S. besides the West Coast states. There's some states that it's non-native in over on the western half of the U.S. So just wanted to share that quick. And they like growing around river valleys and floodplain forests, and they're usually found growing along with cottonwoods, elm, oak, hickory, ash, and walnut trees. So they are a deciduous tree. And I mentioned earlier they're also called the false elm, and that is because they are in the elm family. So the I guess the elm tree could be considered a look-alike. The hackberry tree can be pretty big. It usually grows 40 to 60 feet in height, and the trunk can be several feet in diameter. And a very distinct feature is that bark that you're seeing in this picture here. Let me pull up iNaturalist too, though, so we can look at some more pictures.
Mm.
I
Oh,
always
that's a
forget
good one
to
up there.
give credit. Yeah, I mean, look at that. Really like gnarly gray bark that looks kind of like warty almost. It's got deep,
Mm-hmm.
thin ridges. Very like very obvious, I would say. Definitely like doesn't really look like elm to me too much, you know? Not really,
That's a
personally.
great picture.
Um, yeah, looks like little warts on there, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
The
It looks
elm in
like they took a
comparison,
bunch of little morels and stuck them with hot glue on there in that
it does
photo,
kind of.
doesn't
So here's
it?
the elm. Here's an elm. And the
Mm.
elm, I don't know, it's not, it's got those ridges and stuff, but it doesn't have the like really warty bark that we just saw on the hackberry there. Like,
Yeah, not quite the same.
here's a good one. The elm is kind of like,
Shaggy.
yeah, shaggier a bit, but there's also,
Shaggy
I wonder
versus
what's the
warty.
American elm? Yeah, it's more shaggy for sure. The other thing is that the leaves. So let's look at the hackberry again. The leaves kind of, I would say, kind of look like elm trees in that they, if you look at an elm leaf, I'll show one in a sec here. They're kind of offset, like one side's a bit wider toward the bottom. This is the hackberry, and it does look kind of like that here. But you can notice that the bottom of the leaves, like where the leaves come together in the base, um, is is there's definitely it's offset. You see that, Lindy? Like
Mm-hmm.
one half of the leaf, the base
Higher
starts
versus,
higher
yep.
up, and you do kind of see that in an elm too. I'll show that in a second in a real American elm. Let's look at that. The
Definitely.
hackberry often has these little like warts, green like little round things in the bottom of the
No
leaves, and
pimples?
it's it's some bug. It's like called
Hmm.
something hackberry nipple bug, something like that. That's not right, but
That
it's
is
got
a
nipple in the name.
that is a great name.
It does have nipple in the name. Now, looking at this
We're gonna get
picture here
censored for
again,
that.
look at the look at the veins, the secondary veins, which are the
Mm.
little veins that come off the main mid vein of the leaf. Right, they're kind of like all over the place. Now going to the elm leaf here, you also get that offset base, you know, down here. But look at these mid veins; they're way more straight, way more
Oh
symmetrical.
yeah.
Um, so here's a good picture too. Yeah,
It's
definitely
almost like
different.
the that one seems way more structured to me.
Yeah, it's
Like
just a bit more structured.
it's
Yeah, that's right.
symmetrical, but it's more like a sleek looking leaf versus the other one
Yeah,
is more of like an abstract leaf.
especially if you're looking at the veins.
Yeah.
Okay, back to the hackberry. Let me close this elm tab here. Um, Now the elms do have edible parts too. The samaras are the little like fruits, I guess, that the elm grows in the spring. And I've never had them, but they're supposed to be edible too. Something to check out. Now, what you really are after on the hackberry in the winter, though, are the little berries, and they will turn like purplish. Oh, here's one in the winter. Look at that. Um,
Whoa.
it's a cool
Proof
picture. This is
they grow in the
a
winter.
hackberry just covered in snowflakes, and that's what you're after. The interesting part about they can be like orange and red too, and green, but I believe when they're like really ripe, they're going to be purplish. Um, let's see if there's some more pictures down here. I'm going to scroll down a little more. There's got to be some better berry pics. I guess here's one. Um, Now these little tiny fruits, there's not a lot of flesh on them. They're more of a nut, honestly, and a seed, but you can chew them on kind of just how you can eat, some of the edible nuts we have, like walnuts. They're the seed, but you can easily chew them. They're crunchy. I've watched some videos of people eating them now, and they all have one large seed in there, and they're supposed to taste like kind of sweet. The cool thing about them is that, like Sam Thayer calls them, I think like the ultimate survival food or something like
Hmm.
that. He holds them in what do you call it, in high,
High high
how do you say
standard,
that?
high
High, yeah, there's a word.
high
I'm blanking.
appraisal, high.
he's very he's very adamant about them being a great survival food because they pack a bunch of calories, and
Hmm.
they have all three macro, like good balance of all three macronutrients, so carbs, fats, and
Hmm.
proteins. And that's kind of hard to find with plants in nature. Also, lots of animals love them, so you're going to have some competition as a forest as a
Ooh.
forager. So even if, I don't think these are very known. Like I've never really heard many people talk about them, many foragers. So you might not have like foragers competing too much with you, but you might be throwing some hands with the squirrels, and you know you might have some competition from those forest dwellers.
That's so
And
funny.
they're about pea sized, the berries,
Yeah,
and they'll ripen.
they look kind of
Yeah,
like a choke cherry to me.
yeah, a little bit,
A little bit like
They hang,
the
but
berry itself.
the choke cherry comes in
Yeah,
clusters,
but
whereas these are all
the
single.
individual.
They
Mhm.
grow single on the tree.
Mhm.
It's a big difference there. Um, and if you're lucky, I read that they can sometimes you can find them until the next spring on the tree. Now they do grow pretty high up in the tree often, so several articles I read in books they said like bring a berry hook or something to pull those branches down, or wait for a storm to drop a bunch on the ground. Or if you're a hunter and you have a run and gun hang on tree stand system, like my brother and I do, then you might as well throw some of those climbing tree stand sticks in your backpack and climb those trees that way. So here we go. We're almost to the last plant, Lindy, but I
So
have something
crazy.
really cool to share about hackberries.
Mm.
This is just history blows my mind usually, so
Totally.
I'm all about sharing that wild food history. So nature.com, they talk about this article here, food of Peking man, and this was published in 1935, so it's a pretty old paper. But let me just read this abstract, or a quote from this abstract. They say that it would appear that Peking man, which by the way is like, I'm pretty sure that was like a mummy found
Mm.
in Asia. So it's like one of those early humans that they found. They say that quote, it would appear that Peking man supplemented the meat diet provided by the game animals of the hills and plains by vegetable food, which he obtained as a food gatherer. About 20 feet above the lowest level of human occupation in the Chokutin cave, and in a breccia containing numerous quartz artifacts and bone fragments, there is a layer several inches thick made up of thousands of fragments of the shells of seeds. The markings on these shells indicate that they are hackberry seeds, globular bodies smaller than peas. The modern hackberry occurs as a small tree in the forests both of North America and Asia, but is most characteristic as a shrub on semi arid slopes and stream borders, as it is improbable that they could have been introduced into the cave by any other agency than animals or man. It may safely be assumed that they formed part of the food of one or the other, their shells having been crushed while being eaten. In the United States, the berries are extensively used as food by birds, rodents, and the Indians, especially in the Southwest. The most common use is a flavoring for meat or bread in order to eliminate the
Hmm.
possibility of these seeds having been introduced into the cave by rodents. Experimental observations have been made in which it was found that monkeys alone broke up the shells in a manner corresponding to that in which the shells in the cave had been broken. It is therefore more than probable that the seeds were brought to the cave by human agency and that the hackberry seeds afford the earliest known example of a vegetable food used by primitive man.
That's pretty
So,
crazy.
if they were brought there by humans, this could be the oldest archaeological foraged food find that we have.
Do you think they
But that,
mixed them with pine bark bread?
maybe, good question. But that's
Be
pretty
pretty
cool
dope.
because we don't find a lot of like plant material in archaeological sites, but seeds are
Hmm.
one of the things that tend to, um, you know, that tend to preserve. Now, I'd be interested. I need to dig deeper because I bet by now they've done some radiocarbon dating or something like that, and this is a pretty old paper.
Hmm.
So, yeah,
Yeah, that's super cool though.
super cool. I thought. All right, let's move on to plant number 5.
Boo boo
Lindy,
boo
take the floor.
boo. Last one. We're so excited. So this one is persimmons, and I love persimmons. I've only ever had them though from the grocery store, which we know is never the same as having like a wild
No,
food.
supposedly the wild ones are way better.
Yeah.
And people listening right now might be, I mean, unless you're like a hardcore forager or you have a lot of foraging in your social media timelines, you might have, this might, blow your mind a bit. Yes, there
Hmm.
are wild persimmons in the US.
And they are supposedly super, super tasty. I would love
Yep.
to go try some at some point. Um, there are species of persimmons that are farmed all over the world, and they are a pretty popular fruit. In Germany, they call it, is it kaki? Is that how you pronounce that?
Kaki, yeah. It's part of
Kaki.
the, yeah, kaki. It's because of
um,
the scientific name of the Asian ones. It has
mm,
kaki in the name.
have you ever tried those?
Yeah, they taste. I
Yeah.
mean, that's what you get at most grocery stores here. Even it's that the Asian variety
Mm-hmm.
is the cultivated one. That's that people really like to eat.
Yep. Um, yeah, the scientific name is Diosphoros virginiana.
Let's
That
try that
sound.
again.
Oh man. Diocypros
I think it's
virginiana.
I think it's Diospyros virginiana.
Mm, it might be. It might be one of my other two options as
We
well.
really need to figure out how to get a Chat GPT bot in here in the streams, like I said last time, so we can just like press a button and it'll
Just to correct our
it'll
words for us.
yeah, exactly.
It'll be my voice over immediately. That'd be pretty funny. But the Latin name means fruit of the gods or the divine food. So if you've
Mm.
eaten these, you may be a god. That's exactly what that means. Um, and they're also called possum apples because opossums love them, which I would love to see a video of that because opossums eating is pretty stinking cute.
Didn't you say you'd like never seen one in real life?
No,
Awesome.
I've never seen an opossum.
Maybe in Wisconsin this year. We'll see one.
Hmm.
They're
Yeah, I
kind of
don't.
like interesting. I don't know. They're not my favorite looking animal.
They're
I
like
wouldn't call them cute.
they're rats that hang in the trees like bats. They're rat bats.
I'm gonna pull up some pictures
Yeah.
of the plant here so we can share it
Yes,
with the viewers.
please.
We still
They're
got a
beautiful.
people in the on the chat here and in the live viewing.
Hmm.
Pumped that you guys are here. This is awesome.
Definitely. Yeah.
So we're looking at some pictures right now of the persimmons.
Hmm.
Um, the wild ones are smaller than the ones you find at the grocery store, but
Pretty
they're usually
typical.
like orange looking when ripe.
Hmm.
Usually like a light yellow green turning orange the riper they get. I kind of think they kind of look like tomatoes, like especially these ones when they're nice and plump. They look like orange tomatoes to me. They're more of a tomato than an apple. You don't think so?
I think they look like a tomatillo, like an orange tomatillo,
They're way larger
without
though.
this. Yeah,
The
without the
tomatillo is
skin on
tiny.
it though. Yeah, I mean the
The
tomatillo is
tomatillos
like.
are more ground cherry looking. But yeah, I
mm,
okay.
I
I
mean, I
see
think
what
it's
you
just
mean.
the top part of it that kind of. Yeah,
Well,
I don't
yeah,
know.
that's. Well,
I
I
don't know if
mean,
it looks like a tomato,
take
but.
the little top, the sepals, the plant
Hmm.
part away. Then I think you kind of got a
Like a
tomato.
plum.
Yeah, plum, tomato
It looks
cross.
like a fruit, basically, is what we're saying.
It looks real
An orange
tasty.
one. It looks very tasty. I would really like to go down and get some of these. As far as where they grow, maybe we can pull up a distribution map there.
Let me do that. I'm not gonna even bother with the USDA map right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't. They do. They don't really like growing in the shade. They prefer lots of sun exposure. Usually, young forests are in the open woods, streams, and valleys, in forest edges, and along fence rows, like in old fields. And then, yeah, that map you pulled up there.
So I pulled up the map. I would say Texas, everything from Texas up to the middle of the US to the right. Like
Mm-hmm.
not counting Wisconsin, but like states right under Wisconsin. Sadly, not Wisconsin. Otherwise, I know I would have already
Mm-hmm.
been foraging for these. But I think that's Illinois right there. I closed my map now. I should know this, but
Whatever
yeah,
state those are.
I would say
Yep.
like southeastern United States is
Mm-hmm.
really where you're gonna get into these. So road trip,
Definitely,
Lindy.
definitely worth a road trip for those. I would love to go
I
on a road
think
trip for
so.
those. Mm-hmm. Be super, super fun. That'd be like a fun little loop if we could time everything. Do like rice and then persimmons and then something and something.
Yeah,
Seaweed, you know.
yeah.
Super
That
fun.
would be a lot. We'd need a big 3 4 weeks probably.
Yeah. As far as kind of like a quick ID, again, you guys should probably look into how to ID them yourselves, but they usually grow on, or they grow on deciduous trees. The bark is very scaly looking. Some of them are described kind of as like dragon scales. So this is
Yeah,
the dragon fruit of the
it
gods,
does. Look at
you
that.
know? Yeah, there
It
you
does
go.
look like dragon scales.
Yeah. Maybe that's how dragons were invented. It's usually
What
a
do you mean
small.
dragons are real? Everyone
I
knows
know,
that. I'm a
I
dragon
know,
believer.
I know. Game of Thrones, of course, it's real. Um, Usually on a very small tree, but sometimes they can grow to a pretty impressive size. Like that's a pretty good sized tree, I think.
Yeah,
South Carolina state record measured it at 132 feet tall in 1995. So
that's pretty big.
that is a
It's a good
tree.
sized tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. 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 Um, as far as the taste goes, it's kind of a sweet tropical fruit, has like a little bit of a honey flavor almost, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
very
that's right.
nice. Kind of like a mealy, meaty texture.
Pleasant.
Yeah, very pleasant. Very pleasant. Um, Usually they reach their full ripeness in kind of October, just depending on where it is you live, and usually well into the winter months. Um, Sometimes you can find them lying in the snow in the trees after they drop, and it's one of those fruits that you don't want to pick too early.
Hmm.
They You want to look for them when they're a little bit wrinkly, when they're ripe. Um, if they're not ripe, they have a very astringent flavor and can be a little bit unpleasant. as far as
Not
what
just a
we've.
little bit. Everything I've read is like
Yeah.
you will remember the experience of eating an unripe persimmon. And actually, there's a whole foraging thread on Reddit about this called
Hmm.
Persimmons Off the Ground. And people are going at it in here just arguing. Um, there's, I mean, I can read some of these like Guru 001 says that yes, pick them from the ground because if you start trying to pick them from the tree, you will get some that aren't ripe. They do not need frost to ripen. I've eaten them dead ripe in August. There's no such thing as too mushy as long as they haven't fermented. Visually check for insects, but I haven't found insects to be a problem when you pick them up daily. In this situation, you need to pull on the bract. If it separates cleanly, they are ripe. But if the bract pulls a plug out of the center, the persimmon was knocked off too early. Then
Mm.
someone answered, C2 Cola said, repeat ad nauseum, American persimmons do not need frost to ripen, called bledding. They are ripe when they are orange, pinkish, and on the ground. If they have purple black splotches, do not use them. The trick is getting them off the ground before the ants and bees get to them. For this reason, I used to visit my favorite tree twice a day. Um, they said here that they're like cooking, making puddings and breads with them. Um, oh man, I mean, I could keep reading in here, but there's a whole like argument thread of people just trying. I mean, it's good. It's good stuff. I've been looking more at Reddit for foraging stuff. There's some good discussion on there. I would say
I
it's
don't think
pretty
I
good.
had ever used Reddit until this year doing research.
Really.
Mm-mm. Ooh, that's a good
Well,
picture. Look at
in a
that.
lot of books, I did read though that like they can um, be harvested into the winter, and obviously you got to get there before some animals, but some were saying that you can sometimes find them in the snow around trees. You just gotta again make sure they're still kind of orangish, not super black, full of mold and all that. So
Not fermented.
not fermented, yeah. Again, not one that we're super familiar with, but depending on where you are, one you can find into the winter, according
Hmm.
to a good amount of sources that I found. Yeah,
Hmm.
and I did have another journal here, another interesting fact. Let me pull that up. So, American Journal of Botany. This article is called "The Ecological Side of an Ethnobot." Sorry, the Jesus words. We're getting to that
And I
point.
was bad.
The ecological side of an ethnobotanical coin, legacies in historically managed trees by Ross et al. From 2014. And I took a quote out of here where they say, um, quote, when Europeans arrived in North America, they discovered the sweet custard like fruits of American persimmon, described in the earliest published book by an English colonist as luscious sweet in 1590. Other writers of the time also noted the fruits and their potential value, including Jamestown Captain John Smith. Historically, the plant was a common component of Native American diet throughout the southeastern United States and is regularly found in archaeobotanical remains. Archaeobotanical data from the three late Archaic period, 300 to 800 BC sites in the lower Mississippi Valley, found persimmons to be the most ubiquitous fruit crop used. That's pretty
Hmm.
crazy.
I think
Um,
the custard like description is very good.
yeah.
That
Well,
seems
let me
very
just finish
accurate.
this quote here. They said one more thing that paleobotanical analysis of refuse pits from two Mississippian sites identified D. virginiana in 78 to 80% of the pits.
Hmm.
So, yeah, very commonly used by the Native Americans.
That's
Pretty
awesome.
cool. But yeah, you're right. The custard is actually a good way to explain this
Yeah,
fruit. Like, I
definitely.
would totally like to make some ice cream out of some persimmons.
Oh, so good.
If you haven't watched our ice cream episode or listened to it, nutrient dense ice cream making, super easy, four ingredients. Listen to the whole thing to learn how to do it and
Mm,
why.
we should do a pudding with this one
Oh,
because you
yeah.
could just use like natural gelatin
Yeah,
and the persimmons.
yeah.
Oh, be
You might
super
not need
tasty.
to. You might have pectin and stuff in there
Mm.
to kind of make its own. Cool. So that concludes plant number 5. Definitely one that we're gonna harvest one of these days. We're gonna have a whole vlog. I can already like see us like doing a road trip, filming it all, getting just a freezer full of persimmons. Since we don't have them here in Montana, we need to get like a lot of them.
Get another freezer.
Yeah. Now there are these are just 5 species. There are other species to explore in the winter, like spruce trees, crab apples you could find. We won't cover all of those in detail now because, we already actually have some podcast episodes and
Hmm.
vlogs on the YouTube channel and on the Year of Plenty podcast and all the audio platforms about those, especially spruce. We did a whole video and podcast on foraging for spruce in winter, and we have a vlog of us making traditional spruce gum. That's one of, I
Hmm.
think, our first video on YouTube. Check it out. Really cool, fun project to do in winter. We were out there in Montana in the woods in like 4 feet of snow harvesting spruce sap pitch
That's pretty
to
fun.
make spruce gum. It's super fun. That's a great one to do in the
Hmm.
winter. Yeah,
Hmm.
awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for being here live with us today. That was super fun. I hope the the stream was all right and it didn't lag too much. Next time, I think it was a lot better this time than last time. So next time I'm gonna try to get Lindy an Ethernet cable too, so that we can hopefully just figure this out. Because I like doing this live, so we can have
Yep.
some chat interaction too. So if you join on future streams, ask away in the chat. Like
Yeah.
I want that interaction. It's fun to hear from you guys live, and that way maybe we can answer some questions. If you're watching this replay, leave comments below. We'll try to maybe answer them in future episodes. And if you feel like we said something that didn't make any sense here, leave a comment too, because then
Yeah.
everyone can learn and we can start arguing in the comments together.
Let's grow together.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. Yeah, this was
Definitely.
fun though. So thanks, Mike. Again, shout out to Mike Mason, always in the live
Woo.
stream. Um, love that you're here, and thanks to everyone else as well. Now, yeah, now we're gonna go to the gym, right? I think
Yes.
it's
It's
late.
only it's only late at night. Let's go work out.
Let's do it.
Woo.
All right. Bye bye, y'all.
Bye.
Okay, let's give it a sec. I'm gonna let this come to an end here, the live stream. All right. Bye bye, y'all. It's definitely
Bye.
lagging.
Mine says it was uploaded.
Oh, okay. Let's give it a sec. It's still going. I'm gonna let this come to an end here.
Should we leave?
Yes.